Revenge with Karen.
You're not documenting feelings, Rebecca. You're documenting synergies. That's the first thing Chad ever said to me. No hello, no handshake, just that, while holding a half-spilled oat milk latte and pointing at my screen like he'd discovered electricity. I had just spent 4 hours debugging a data pipeline loop that only existed because the company's last golden boy had copy-pasted someone else's code from a tutorial blog. And now, this one shows up. Chad, the CEO's freshly minted son, armed with a Harvard MBA and the kind of smirk only a trust fund and too much cologne can supply. Let me paint it for you. I'm sitting in a room that still smells faintly of burnt plastic from last week's fried router. Thank you, budget cuts. Chad breezes in wearing a name tag that says SVP of Strategy, even though the only strategy he's demonstrated so far is talking loudly and Googling terms in incognito mode. He calls a team meeting before even learning anyone's name. Spouts something about total brand immersion and optimizing the back-end narrative. I asked, deadpan, are we telling bedtime stories to the database now? He didn't laugh, just nodded and said, exactly. And hey, before I get too deep into this caffeine-fueled therapy session, real quick, if you're listening and you've ever had a Chad in your office, go ahead and give this story a like. And if you're one of the 93% of folks who haven't subscribed yet, it costs nothing, but it helps the team more than you know. All right, back to the crime scene. The thing is, I didn't hate Chad at first. I pitied him. He didn't ask for his father's company. He inherited it like a genetic disease. But when you walk into a room full of people who have built something with their bare hands, who've bled into the code, lost weekends to server crashes, patched holes at 2 a.m. because clients don't sleep, and your first move is to restructure the visibility hierarchy and schedule 4 meetings titled Vision Sync, you're not just out of touch. You're an infection. I had built the core product at Cortexvia from scratch. 6 years ago, it was barely a prototype duct taped together with Python scripts and hope. Now, it ran 15 enterprise clients' logistics across 4 continents. And I didn't do it with a framed diploma. I did it with caffeine, insomnia, and a terrifying capacity to hold grudges. But Chad waltzed in like we were in the middle of some MBA case study. He didn't want to understand the system. He wanted to own it. Without reading a line of code, he started changing calendar invites, renaming internal folders. Suddenly, my name was removed from the weekly executive updates, replaced by Data Intelligence Team SVP Summary, which is rich because the Data Intelligence team was just me and a junior hire named Milo, who still types with 2 fingers. Then came the real slap, the Galix Systems deal. The Holy Grail, $80 million licensing contract that would take our scrappy little engine and slap it onto one of the biggest logistics networks in the country. I'd been prepping the demo environment for 6 months, cleaning up dependencies, containerizing the modules, tightening every loose thread like it was a bomb wire. This was my baby. But of course, Chad had other ideas. One Monday, I walked into the weekly sync only to see the agenda had been rewritten. Galix pitch lead presenter, Chad Bowman. I blinked at it like it was a prank. It wasn't. Chad grinned across the table like he'd just eaten my sandwich and asked me to rate his chewing. I pulled the CTO aside after the meeting, asked if this was a mistake. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. He's the SVP now, Rebecca. Optics matter. Optics, not integrity, not success rate. Not the fact that if Chad so much as touched the back-end terminal, would fold like a lawn chair in a hurricane. No, what mattered was that Chad looked good in a suit and had the right surname. That's when I felt the chill, not anger, not even betrayal. Just that cold, still moment when you realize the people in charge aren't playing the same game you are. They're not even in the same stadium. So I did what any self-respecting engineer does when a toddler takes the wheel. I buckled up and waited for the crash. 2 weeks before the pitch, I was eating a cold tuna wrap at my desk, triple-checking the container orchestration on the Sandbox server when I got the calendar update. Final run-through Galix pitch presentation, led by Chad. I stared at the subject line like it had personally insulted my mother. I'd been fine-tuning the demo for months, setting up the simulated supply chain data, customizing the reporting UI to Galix's specs, even building in a fail-safe restore checkpoint in case anything tanked mid-presentation. And now, apparently, I was being relegated to background tech support while Harvard's discount Ken doll took center stage. I forwarded the invite to my boss, Lena, with a one-line question. Is this a mistake? She replied 5 minutes later with a thumbs-up emoji and the words, let's let Chad shine. Let Chad shine. That's corporate code for, you're not in the picture anymore. We're not decent enough to tell you outright. I walked over to her office because I still had the deranged hope that some part of this could be salvaged. She was tapping away at her laptop, Spotify blasting some playlist called Productivity Bangers like that's a thing. Lena, I said, calm but flat, Chad's never even logged into the sandbox. He doesn't know how the data flow resolves. Whole pitch rests on showing Galix we can plug into their platform without collapsing like a drunk uncle on Thanksgiving. This isn't the time for optics. She looked up, exhaled, and gave me the kind of smile HR gives right before telling you your badge doesn't work anymore. Rebecca, you've been amazing. Seriously. But the execs feel this is more of a strategic play now. Big vision, big titles. Chad's great in front of a room. Chad couldn't front a lemonade stand without crashing it into a bush, I muttered. She frowned. Play nice. That was it. That was the message. Not do what's right. Not let's impress the client. Just play nice. Later that day, I got looped into a new email chain, Galix pitch materials for Chad. He had asked for just a few quick bullet points summarizing the technical environment. The environment I'd been living in for 6 months. I sent him a neatly documented 11-page handoff with warnings in bold red. Do not open demo buildery.exe before setting environment vars. I knew he wouldn't read it. I just wanted it timestamped in Outlook hell. The next few days were surreal. Chad held rehearsals in the executive conference room, pacing around like he was auditioning for Shark Tank, added phrases like AI-powered logistics, even though we had no machine learning anywhere in the stack. He changed the client dashboard color scheme because blue is too passive. He wanted orange for energy. Meanwhile, I sat on the sidelines, sipping burnt coffee, pretending not to hear him tell the CFO that we built our supply chain infrastructure to scale like Uber. I almost choked. Uber. Our system was more stable than Uber's homepage on a Sunday night, and he was out here selling vapor. And just to keep things spicy, Milo, my junior dev, accidentally forwarded Chad a Slack screenshot where I had referred to him as Sir Fails-a-Lot, Duke of Crashing Things. I had to smooth that over with an apology that started with haha, classic autocorrect, and ended with let me know how I can support Chad's vision. The worst part? Galix was actually excited. Their team had been emailing, asking technical questions about sandbox compatibility and real-time fault tolerance. They even requested a private dev call to go over the module security, and Chad punted that to me with a smile and a post-it that said, "Make me look good, PLZ." I should have said no, but I didn't. I was still clinging to the delusion that competence might matter. That if I just showed up, kept the demo flawless, made sure every thread was tight and every button clicked like magic, someone might see the truth. That's the trap, isn't it? When you build something valuable, you think it'll protect you. You think it'll speak for itself, but products don't speak. People do. And sometimes the loudest person in the room is also the one holding the grenade. I went home that night and sat in my car for 45 minutes in the driveway, headlights off, just listening to the engine hum. Wasn't angry anymore. I was bracing, because I knew Chad was going to screw it up. I just didn't know how big the crater would be. Not yet. The conference room lights dimmed at 9:59 a.m. on the dot. One of the interns, God bless his caffeinated soul, wheeled in an absurdly overcomplicated speaker rig like we were broadcasting from a moon base instead of just zooming in a few Galix execs. The screen flickered to life, and there they were. 5 suits, all poker-faced, sitting around a walnut conference table so shiny you could land a drone on it. At the head sat their CTO, Marcus Lynn, a guy known in industry circles for building million-dollar infrastructure and never smiling about it. My palms were dry. That's how I knew I'd overprepared. No nerves left, just code. I opened the presentation deck, clean, simple, only 3 slides. Rest would be a live walkthrough of the system's sandbox, inventory reconciliation, adaptive routing visualization, and finally, predictive failure heat maps. All tied to real-time synthetic data I'd crafted by hand to mirror Galix's own pipeline. This wasn't going to be a dog and pony show, it was going to be surgical. Thank you all for joining, I began, clicking into the dashboard as it spun up. Isolated a replica environment to demonstrate full integration without affecting your staging pipeline. What you're seeing here is actually, Chad said, standing up from his ergonomic throne with the smug grace of a man who once read a headline about leadership. I'll take it from here. He moved to the head of the table. I didn't move. He extended his hand toward the laptop. I still didn't move. There was a beat of silence, and then Lena, seated off to the side, gave me a tight smile and nodded, so I let go. Chad yanked the laptop like it was a prize on a game show and turned to face the screen. Hi, everyone. Chad Bowman here, SVP of Strategy. I'll be walking you through the magic behind Cortexvia's next-gen backend. I sat back, folded my hands in my lap, and waited. What followed was performance art. He gestured at the dashboard like it was an aquarium exhibit. Here you'll see our real-time optimization pane. It works using, he squinted at a tooltip I'd written in Latin as a joke. Some pretty sophisticated tech under the hood. He clicked. The screen flickered. He clicked again. The dashboard stuttered, then popped up a message, variable path mismatch. Please reset environment vars. He didn't read it. Instead, he smiled and said, as you can see, this module predicts failure points using, well, think of it like weather radar, but for logistics. He clicked a third time. The demo hung, completely. No data, no visuals, just a spinning loading icon. Then the whole browser froze. He tapped the trackpad. Harder. The laptop beeped in protest. And then, with nuclear-level confidence, he looked directly at Marcus Lynn and said, a Harvard man should present the deal, not a self-taught coder. My jaw didn't move, but something in my brain did. Like a little switch labeled, cool, war it is. Marcus blinked once, leaned slightly toward the screen. Is it supposed to do that? Chad chuckled, but it came out shaky. Just a momentary lag. He opened Task Manager. Yes, Task Manager. Mid-client demo. Hang on, just gonna relaunch, he muttered, now visibly sweating. I didn't say a word, just turned to Lena and watched her soul exit her body in real time. Marcus cleared his throat. So, you coded this entire environment, Chad? He froze, then forced a smile. I oversaw it. Marcus didn't respond. He just looked past him right at me. I didn't nod, I didn't blink, I just waited. Chad clicked back into Chrome. The browser reopened. But the container instance was dead. No dashboard, just a blank screen and a 500 error. That's unusual, Chad said, maybe an API hiccup. It's local, I finally said quietly. There's no external API call. It's a static mock environment. Could have heard a feather fart in that room. Chad turned toward me, visibly flustered. Well, maybe you shouldn't have over-engineered it. I raised an eyebrow. Sorry. Thought I was supposed to play nice. Nobody laughed. Galix disconnected 10 minutes later. No questions, no follow-up, just polite thanks and a silent hang-up. When the Zoom call ended, Chad slammed the laptop shut and hissed, "You sabotaged me." No, I said, standing up. Just never bothered to learn how to use what I built. Then I walked out. Didn't even grab my badge, because I knew what was coming next. And this time, I wasn't going to lift a single damn finger to stop it. The morning after the crash, the building smelled like guilt and burnt printer toner. I walked in just past 8, same as always, coffee in hand, systems already pinged from my phone. My inbox, however, had grown a tumor. 27 unread emails, all subject-lined some variation of post-demo debrief or urgent alignment needed, and not a single one addressed to Chad. At 8:15, Lena called me into her office. She didn't look up from her laptop when I walked in, just gestured toward the chair like she was waving away a fly. So, obviously yesterday didn't go the way we hoped. I didn't respond. I wasn't there to validate her corporate performance art. She kept typing. Or it is processing. There's concern about our technical transparency. Chad's asked to take a more hands-on role moving forward. There it was. I blinked slowly, and me. She finally looked up, her face a blend of forced empathy and resignation. You'll be stepping back from client-facing duties. Just for now. We'd like you to focus on documentation. Documentation. It's the corporate equivalent of asking a surgeon to organize tongue depressors after the patient dies. I see, I said flat, and we'd like it comprehensive, end-to-end, so Chad can onboard more easily. Of course, I replied, wouldn't want Chad to strain himself. She didn't laugh. I left her office and walked straight to Milo's desk. He looked up, already bracing. They demoted you, I nodded. You're in charge of the Galix client now. He paled. I'm not ready, you'll be fine, I lied. Because that was the game now, let it rot from the inside. I'd built this engine airtight, but it wasn't idiot-proof. And if they were hell-bent on letting Chad drive it off a cliff, who was I to stop them? I opened a fresh Confluence page and began writing. The real documentation lived in my head, hours of context, nuanced logic loops, and patches only I understood because I'd written them at 3 a.m. during production outages. But what I gave them was clean, professional, polished, just incomplete enough to make Chad think he had it handled. Some modules I flagged as requires elevated access. Others I labeled as legacy function deprecated. I sprinkled in just enough technical fog to make it look like everything was there, while carefully walling off the crown jewels. And Module 6, I air-gapped it, built a private key authentication layer around it, and stripped the fallback routes. Without my cryptographic signature, a recompiled build from scratch, it wouldn't deploy. Not malicious, not illegal, just safe. 2 days later, I watched from a distance as Chad tried to run the demo again for a smaller internal review. I could see the flicker of panic on his face through the glass conference room wall, the loading icon spinning, the delay, the eventual blank screen. He looked at Milo, hissed something, then slammed his palm on the table and walked out before anyone could ask questions. Nobody called me in. Nobody asked for help. That was the new strategy, pretend everything was fine while the floorboards creaked. But the whispers started. Galix hadn't responded since the failed pitch. Rumors were swirling that Marcus Lynn was reevaluating the contract entirely. Our VP of sales started ducking calls. The CTO went on vacation. And me, I was invisible now, not fired, not even scolded, just vanished from calendars and threads. Like I was a ghost haunting the very product I'd birthed. I took longer walks at lunch, drove the scenic route home, didn't rush my coffee anymore. The anger had curdled into something colder, something strategic. They didn't want me in the spotlight? Fine. Let them find out what running the engine in the dark felt like. In my spare time, I backed up everything. Every commit, every patch, every internal memo that proved I'd warned them, flagged gaps, offered help, raised red flags. I didn't know exactly what I was preparing for, but I knew enough not to leave fingerprints on a sinking ship. One night, alone in the office, I opened the build logs and stared at my own commits. 6 years of code. 6 years of bleeding for something no one would ever thank me for. Then I renamed the repository. Just one word, artifact. Because if they wanted to bury me, they damn well have to dig through what I left behind. It started with a ripple, small enough to ignore if you weren't paying attention. An email from Marcus Lynn, Galix CTO, timestamped 3:04 a.m., forwarded to Lena, CCing legal sales, and of course Chad. The subject line was surgical. Subject, install error module 6, auth conflict no exclamation points. No dramatic language, just the corporate equivalent of a hand grenade with the pin removed. By 8:15 that morning, the war drums were beating. Chad came storming down the hall like he was leading a parade no one showed up for, barking into his Bluetooth earpiece, which, as always, wasn't connected to anything. I was in the kitchen, pouring a cup of burnt coffee, when Lena cornered me like a substitute teacher trying to act like she still had authority. "Rebecca," she said, voice clipped, "did you hardlock a module behind your credentials?" I didn't look up. "Which module?" She flinched. 6. "Interesting," I said, sipping. "That's one of the ones Chad specifically told me he had covered." Her jaw tightened. "Galix says it throws an auth conflict on install. Their system flags it as insufficient key permissions. They're asking for immediate remediation." I nodded like she just told me the weather. Protocol for client data conflicts is pretty clear. Legal can send me a release form, signed by all involved parties. "You're not even going to explain what's wrong?" I did. "The handoff doc." I paused, page 13. Paragraph 4, red text, bolded, all caps. She opened her mouth to respond but stopped short. Something behind her eyes twitched. That look middle managers get when they realize their hands are empty and the chessboard is already in check. An hour later, I got the official email from legal. "Rebecca, we've received notification from Galix regarding a system error traced back to your prior codebase. In order to assist, please provide an outline of the issue and any necessary corrective action. Regards, Janine Corporate Counsel," I replied in less than a minute. "Hi Janine, per protocol, I require a data release form signed by all parties, internal and external, before engaging on any client IP that has been reassigned post-transition. Best, Rebecca, no smiley faces, no soft landings. Just the truth, wrapped in policy they themselves had shoved down my throat for years." What followed was silence. The kind of silence that buzzes with panic behind glass office doors. I watched as Chad sat in the boardroom, red in the face, flipping through printouts like they held some secret decoder ring. I knew what he was looking for. He was trying to find a way to make it my fault again. Problem was, the system logs didn't lie. Neither did GitHub timestamps. Those would show that Module 6 final commit required multi-factor authentication tied to my internal ID. They could override it, sure. Rebuild the environment from scratch. Assign a new key holder. But that would take weeks, and Galix wasn't waiting weeks. Marcus emailed again that afternoon, this time directly to the CEO. This is a blocker. Until Module 6 deploys, we cannot finalize integration. If your team can't resolve it, we're pausing the deal. Email got forwarded down the chain like a hot potato in a conference room full of gas leaks. Meanwhile, I spent the day reorganizing my cloud drive. Not for them, for me. Making sure every receipt, every memo, every scrap of CYA I'd ever created was sorted, tagged, and ready to unleash if someone tried to get cute. By 4 p.m., Lena stopped by my desk again. She didn't speak for a few seconds, just hovered. I didn't look up. Let her sit in it. We're drafting the form, she said finally, voice low. I nodded. Cool. Rebecca, this isn't what anyone wanted. I turned to face her. Didn't seem like that when Chad took the laptop out of my hands. She winced. Can you help us make this right? No, I said. But I'll help Galix if they ask the right way. Then I put in my AirPods and hit play on a playlist labeled Spite-Driven Productivity. First track, Smooth Criminal. I didn't dance. My foot tapped the whole song. They had no idea the difference between a resignation and a removal until I made them beg for both. By the end of that week, Cortexvia had developed a new daily ritual. Panic at 9, blame at noon, silence by 5. The Monday all-hands was a bloodbath, passive-aggressive smiles hiding full-blown breakdowns. Lena tried to open with let's stay solutions-focused, but her voice cracked halfway through the word solutions. The CEO, Britt Bowman, Chad's proud papa and the architect of this whole nepotistic dumpster fire, stormed into the Zoom room like a Wall Street banshee in a fleece vest, face flushed, hairline retreating like enemy troops. Where's the update? He barked, his camera slightly tilted upward so we were all treated to a wide-angle view of his nose, hairs, and ego. Galix is on hold. They've paused execution. That's $80 million dead in the water. Someone talk. The silence was wet and heavy. Chad fidgeted like he was trying to telekinetically disappear. Milo stared at his keyboard as if the right keystroke might summon a wormhole. Finally, Everett squinted at Chad. You said the demo was stable. You said Rebecca's handoff was complete. You personally approved the production schedule. So, what happened? Chad cleared his throat and did what he always did when he didn't have an answer. He started rearranging words like Scrabble tiles and hoping a sentence fell out. Well, Dad, I mean Mr. Bowman, we've encountered what appears to be a cryptographic persistence issue. The deployment pipeline is throwing access-level exceptions due to deprecated modular dependencies and non-aligned tokens. Milo coughed softly. It says auth conflict keyholder mismatch. That's all it says? Everett stared at him. What does that mean in English? It means Rebecca still owns the lock, Milo said, barely above a whisper. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward, it was surgical. Like someone had taken a scalpel to the room's oxygen supply. Excuse me? Everett asked. Chad jumped in, desperate. It's just a legacy oversight. I mean, it's not like she owns the code. It's company IP. I've been working on a patch. For how long? Everett snapped. 4 days. And where's the patch? Chad glanced down. In Ka. It doesn't compile, Milo added, accidentally aloud. Everyone turned to look at him. He shrank 2 inches in his chair. Everett leaned back and rubbed his temples. Why is her name still listed as the cryptographic keyholder in the build logs? Chad didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Because even though he'd ripped the project out of my hands, slapped his name on it, pitched it like he birthed it during a leadership retreat, he'd never actually touched the infrastructure. Not really. He changed colors, rearranged slides, swapped fonts, but the guts were mine. And now those guts were pushing back. Meanwhile, in my world, things were peaceful. I took the morning off, watered my plants, went to the DMV just to feel something. Stopped by the library and picked up a hardcover because I missed the sound of a real page turning. I knew what was happening in the office. I had enough ex-coworkers still on Slack, still pinging me with OMG they're screwed and screenshots of Everett's meltdown. But I didn't engage. Not yet. Because when people are drowning in their own arrogance, the kindest thing you can do is let the bubbles rise. By Thursday, word had leaked to our investor group. They wanted a status call. That's when Everett really cracked. He called a meeting at 7 a.m., which is CEO speak for I want to ruin your day before coffee. The investors logged in muted video off, a digital jury of stone-faced wallets. One of them finally spoke, Ellen Delaney, venture partner, and the only person in that room who remembered when I built the system in a hoodie and Crocs. "Has Rebecca been contacted?" she asked. Everett hesitated. "We've reached out through appropriate channels." Ellen leaned forward, unmuted her mic, smiled like someone lining up a headshot. "Then why is her out-of-office still on?" He blinked. "Her what?" "She's not answering emails, not taking calls. That's not appropriate channels. That's you hoping she fixes your mess without an apology." Everett shifted in his seat. Chad stared at his phone like it had betrayed him personally. "So what's the plan?" another investor asked. Everett opened his mouth, but nothing came out, because there was no plan. There was just Module 6, and me, and a system built so tight, so exact, that now, without me, it was beginning to collapse under its own stolen weight. The final tech call was scheduled for Friday morning, 10 a.m. sharp. One last chance for Cortexvia to prove they weren't held together by bailing wire and buzzwords. Galix had been quiet all week. No escalation, no demands, just an eerie, surgical silence, kind that either precedes a signed contract or a public execution. Chad prepped like he was going to war, which in a way he was. He wore a new blazer, still creased at the elbows from its packaging, and practiced his pitch in front of the mirror glass outside the boardroom, mouthing lines like, "We've implemented redundancy, and thanks to our agile culture, we've already addressed the core issue." None of which was true. But Chad didn't do true, he did presentation. Ina sat beside him, face tight, with a legal pad full of scripted answers that she'd written and rewritten 3 times that morning. Milo was in the corner, pretending to take notes, mostly because no one had given him anything better to do. And then there was Marcus Lynn, live on screen, sipping something out of a black mug and looking like he hadn't slept in 4 days. "We appreciate your time," Chad began, voice slightly too loud. "Module 6 authentication error has been a valuable learning opportunity. We've taken swift steps to re-engineer access protocols and streamline future handoffs." Marcus didn't blink. "I reviewed the latest deployment packet your team sent last night." Chad nodded like a bobblehead. "Great. You'll see the new keys are clean and the deployment pipeline is fully restructured." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Did you write the deployment script yourself?" Chad's mouth opened, stalled, and closed again. "I collaborated." Marcus clicked something off-screen, because the metadata shows every commit in that branch ties back to Rebecca Sloan, even the ones labeled final edits. Chad glanced sideways at Lena, who scribbled something on her pad like a panicked stenographer. Marcus didn't wait. The container fingerprint hash matches her encryption pattern. Same comment syntax. Same variable structure, even left in her placeholder passwords. "Fluffernutter 42? Really?" Milo snorted before catching himself. Lena shot him a look sharp enough to file taxes with. "I'm overseeing the project," Chad said finally, throat dry. "My role is strategic." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Chad, no part of this code has your fingerprints on it. You renamed a dashboard tab and crashed the integration environment. That's not strategic. That's vandalism." Chad blinked. Looked like a balloon someone forgot to tie. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You took something you didn't understand, broke it in front of your client, then handed us duct tape and a corporate slogan. So I'll ask one more time." He tapped his pen against his desk. "Who wrote this?" No one spoke, because everyone in the room already knew. Chad swallowed. "The team collaborated." Marcus exhaled through his nose. "No. She wrote this. You presented it. Orly then fired her." Lena tried to step in. To clarify, Rebecca wasn't fired. She transitioned off the Marcus raised a hand. "Don't insult my intelligence or hers." And with that, he clicked something. The screen went dark. Just like that, call over. The silence afterward was different this time. Not awkward, not tense. It was terminal. Chad slumped back in his chair, eyes wide, complexion gone full ghost. Lena stared straight ahead like a woman, suddenly aware of every bad choice that led her here. Milo just slowly slid his notepad into his backpack and muttered, "I have a dentist appointment," before walking out. 15 minutes later, Everett's voice could be heard bellowing through the floorboards from the executive wing. "Get her on the damn phone now." But she wasn't picking up. She was out of office. And the auto-reply didn't say when she'd be back. I was elbow deep in a bag of sea salt kettle chips when my phone lit up. Unknown number, Bay Area code. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Could have been spam. Could have been Chad's latest attempt to guilt-trip me into duct taping his implosion. But then I answered. Not because I cared, but because I wanted it to be him. It wasn't. Rebecca Sloan, a calm voice said on the other end. Marcus Lynn. I blinked. Sat up straighter than I had in weeks. Expect to hear from you directly. Didn't plan on it, he said. No small talk. But your company doesn't seem to understand what you built. I smiled. They rarely do. Pause. I've reviewed every commit, every lock, every key, every encrypted subroutine. It's not just elegant, it's surgical. Well, I said, popping another chip, I did have a little time on my hands while they were busy putting my name in the rearview. I'm going to cut to it, Marcus said. If you're open to it, I'd like to bring you in directly. Independent contract. Scope defined by you. I leaned back, chip bag forgotten, you're offering me the project. Yes, as in from Cortexvia, they're out, he said simply. You built the thing we want, they just slapped logos on it. I took a breath, not out of shock, out of satisfaction. I'd consider it. Another pause, this one respectful. I'll have the formal offer sent by COB, he said. Anything you need, yeah, I said. Make sure the contract doesn't include any language about strategic oversight. I could practically hear him smirk. The call ended. I stared at the phone for a long moment. Then I opened my email and searched Cortexvia. Select all, delete. Meanwhile, across town, the floor beneath Chad Bowman's designer shoes was beginning to rot in real time. At 3:17 p.m., the emergency board meeting convened. The investors dialed in. One turned on their cameras this time, not out of laziness, but out of disdain. When rich people stop looking you in the eye, it's already over. Everett Bowman, the once proud king of a company that used to be scrappy and smart, looked like someone had jammed a power drill into his temples. His voice cracked as he tried to set the agenda. Galix has decided to pause the integration process for the time being, he said, like it wasn't already obvious. Correction. Linda Laney said, voice as sharp as a guillotine. Galix has retained Rebecca Sloan independently. They've bypassed you. Everett's jaw clenched. Chad shifted in his chair like he'd swallowed a lit match. This isn't a pause, Everett, she continued. It's an extraction. Another board member chimed in. You replaced your principal engineer with a pitch deck and a last name. And now we're hemorrhaging trust. Fast. I can fix this, Chad blurted. I've already drafted a contingency, don't. Ellen snapped. You couldn't code a light switch, and now you want to build a new infrastructure team from scratch in a week. Sit down, son, and he did, because the boardroom, like the system, had turned into a wall. One Chad couldn't push through, gaslight, or talk over. No more buzzwords, no more optics, just silence. Cold, well-lit, and unanimous. I heard later from Milo that Everett called an emergency with legal after the call. Tried to spin the optics, realigning talent for client-specific collaborations. Code for we got dumped and she took the good china. They sent me flowers that afternoon, the expensive kind. No card. They sent an apology email, 3 paragraphs, all lies. They sent a courier with papers, an NDA, some IP reassignment forms, and a retroactive consulting offer padded with performance incentives. I didn't answer the door, just watched from the kitchen window as the courier stood there awkwardly, sweating in his oversized blazer, holding out a leather folder like it was some sacred offering. Eventually, he left, and I made myself a drink, something strong, something earned. I clicked open Marcus's email. Subject, Proposal Galix Integration Lead Attachment. Contract PDF Line 1, $420,000 for 9 months. Line 2, Scope defined by consultant. Consultant equals Rebecca Sloan. Line 3, Start date, whenever you say so. The sun was low and golden when the doorbell rang. I didn't flinch. I already knew who it was, well, what it was. A last-ditch courier drop. Another carefully bundled bundle of corporate shame wrapped in velvet legalese and desperation. I let it ring twice. Let the silence settle in around me like an old coat. The kettle was hissing softly behind me. Earl Grey, my favorite, padded barefoot to the kitchen, poured my tea, and dropped a slice of lemon in like I wasn't watching an empire crumble 2 miles away. Because I wasn't, not actively. I had better things to do. Through the window, I saw the courier. Mid-30s, overdressed, sweating. He held a leather folder like it was radioactive. A white envelope tucked neatly on top with a post-it note that read, Urgent CEO signature enclosed. Cute. Really thought signatures meant something now. I didn't move, let him knock, once, twice, 3 times, then nothing. Eventually, he sighed, took a picture of the envelope on my porch, likely for legal documentation, and walked back to his car. He lingered there for a bit, like maybe I'd chase him down the driveway, weep, beg for forgiveness, and say, yes, please, let me back into the kingdom of burnout and ignored brilliance. Instead, I sipped. Flowers had arrived earlier. A ridiculous bouquet, peonies, orchids, some exotic monstrosity that smelled like regret. No card this time. They'd run out of words, or maybe just nerve. Then the emails flooded my inbox in waves. From HR, legal, Lena, even Everett himself. Subject lines like, "We value your contributions, let's discuss a new chapter, can we talk?" But the one that stood out had no frills. Just 5 words in the subject. "Do not open the door." It was from Marcus. The body was even shorter. "They'll beg with flowers, apologies, and papers for you to sign. Do not open the door. The deal is off for them. See you Monday." I didn't smile. Not yet. This wasn't a moment for gloating. This was balance. The scales had tilted for so long that now, finally, they'd found their center again. And the sound of that silence, knowing they were clawing at a system I had built, without understanding the bones underneath it, was louder than any applause. I hit delete, all of it, the emails, the pity, the last-minute attempts to save face. Then I opened the Galix contract again, not because I needed to review it, but because I liked the way it looked. My name at the top, my rate, my scope, my terms. I was no longer an employee. I was a force. And there, on the porch, sat a symbol of everything they'd tried to salvage. A folder full of apologies built too late and too hollow. I let it sit there overnight. The sprinklers came on around 3 a.m., drenched it, fitting. When I walked out the next morning, I stepped right over it. No pause, no glance. And as I slid behind the wheel of my car, driving toward a future they no longer had access to, I thought about that boardroom. About Chad's face, about the sound of his voice cracking when he realized the door was locked from the other side. Funny thing is, I never raised my voice, never leaked a memo, never even called in a favor. I just built something no one else could touch. And when they finally reached for it, I let them hit the wall. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.